As you mentioned, we are now in the second half of the year. The year is absolutely flying by, and that's where we find you writing today in this morning's morning brief. Wow, we saw a whole bunch of very interesting developments in the first half of the year. We talk about it each day, and you lose track of some of the things that in fact happened, but there were some big moments.
Yeah, and you know, it's always fun to kind of use the end of the quarter or the end of a half year to look back on, you know, what actually all went down. And, you know, on this show, right, our job is to come on here, talk about the stories of the day, basically get excited about whatever's happening on any one day. Sometimes that news is indeed exciting. Other times, you know, we're just trying to, you know, make lemonade here. But when you look back at the first half of 2021, it really was a momentous year. And you have to start with the meme trade, which came up two separate times. But of course, the January-February period where AMC, or GameStop really, center of the action. You have the Melvin Capital blow up. You have, you know, Keith Gill, Roaring Kitty getting his glow up. Chamath gets in the mix there at one point. GameStop shares, which, you know, again, we talked so much about what makes a meme name, and Sazi, you've reiterated it time and again. Really, it's got to be, you know, part of that equation has got to be it's a consumer name, a name that people know and recognize. GameStop certainly fit that bill. Stock is still up 1,000% this year, even with, I think, there was a 90% drop, I think, at one point from its highs, right around, and you look at the lows there in February, that was right around the time that, you know, Congress hauled a bunch of people, including Ken Griffin, you know, in front of the House Financial Services Committee to kind of explain what all went down during that period. Vlad Tenev, CEO of Robinhood, was there as well. So GameStop shares, they're up 1,000% this year. AMC shares, the rally's even crazier. That stock's up 2,000%, more than 2,000% so far this year. So the meme trade, I think, is really the defining event the first half of the year. 2,500% gains so far this year. But, you know, you even go through what happened in the crypto market. 60,000 on Bitcoin, then Bitcoin gets cut in half. Elon Musk is out there pumping Dogecoin. Even today, he's tweeting about Dogecoin, though Doge didn't really do anything on the move. Elon hosts SNL in early May. Warren Buffett lets it slip who the next CEO of Berkshire Hathaway is going to be. That's going to be Greg Abel, who's currently running the operations side of Berkshire Hathaway. It's called the industrial side of Berkshire Hathaway. Anything that isn't insurance is under Greg's purview, and Greg is going to most likely be the next CEO of the company. Then we had the commodities trade, the inflation trade. Lumber, a big part of that, but we talked with Jared Blickery earlier this week about all the different commodity rallies and cooling off that we have seen so far this year, which gets to the inflation prints we've seen. I know that has you quite excited, Brian Sazi. You know, multi-decade highs for core inflation since 1992, before Brian Chung was even born. We haven't seen core CPI increasing at this level. And, you know, in the backdrop of all this, you've got shortages of everything, which we, you know, outlined some of those stories, which we've discussed: rental cars, used cars, chlorine, which is a fan favorite around here. You don't have enough planes. You don't have people to fly the planes. You don't have people to staff the planes. You don't have enough trucks or truck drivers to drive the trucks. It's a shortage of everything. And that's, you know, also been the story of this recovery. And it really couldn't be a more interesting to me, Sazi, 6 months of the year. I think it'd be nice if we didn't have such an eventful next 6 months. We're still in a pandemic. We're still seeing vaccines roll out. There might be as eventful, but it just seems unlikely. We got a new president. I didn't even mention that in the morning brief. We had a change in power, and we had the insurrection at the Capitol, you know, at the beginning of the year. So that stuff didn't even come up in the morning brief. It's really just been an amazing 6 months, and I mean, I think it'd be nice if it cooled off a little, right?
Well, it certainly has made it fun each morning, more fun than it normally is, Miles. But also for new viewers, worth noting here, our senior Fed correspondent Brian Chung was born in 1993, and the interesting thing here is that, Miles, some of these stories that you mentioned in the morning brief newsletter, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, some of these things are going to be the defining events and moments of the investing community probably over the next decade. Look, the meme trade, that's not going anywhere. The rise in retail investors, that stuff is here to stay. And Miles, one development you just mentioned that I don't think really got enough play. It should have got a lot more play. Warren Buffett over at Berkshire Hathaway and tipping his hand on who the potential successor is. You and I have grown up covering Warren Buffett, perhaps you more so than me, writing about Warren Buffett, taking in his investing wisdoms. But the next 5 years at Berkshire Hathaway are going to look a lot different than the past, 40 or 50 years at Berkshire Hathaway?
Yeah, I think so. think we would have said that 5 years ago, and indeed there have been some changes over that period of time. But I think, Sazi, that's also a great example of just how much other crazy stuff has been going on in the market that Warren Buffett signaling who his successor will be becomes, I think I highlighted it in the brief today because it's something that, I think about more than most people, but I'm not sure that too many market participants care that much about it, even registered that it happened, because there is, as you mentioned, so much else happening in the market. And I think, again, everyone has used the word unprecedented because obviously none of us have ever lived through a global pandemic in the scale and changes it has brought. And I mean, look, we're still broadcasting from home. That'll change in the second half. We're going to go back to the studio. So all these things have uprooted so many different parts of our lives. But, even within financial markets, things have changed at a pace that really hasn't been seen, at least as far as I can remember in my career, Saz. And I think it relegates things like the monumental decision on who will take the reins at Berkshire Hathaway to the third page, the fourth page of a recap, right? Something like that. When you kind of take the flavor of what were the defining moments of the last 6 months of markets. And we mentioned Elon Musk hosting SNL. We didn't even talk about Tesla, which at one point was approaching a $1 trillion valuation. The company has had its own kind of maturation here, where we talk now about just regular old beats on top and bottom line. We didn't even talk about the auto trade, which has been on fire this year, the electrification of America's auto fleet, so on and so forth. So we could go all day on this. We need not at this point, and we should move on. But I think, again, just a reminder of how interesting the first half of the year really was. And I highly doubt that at the end of December, I will be able to write something similar about the second half of 2021. So what I'll do is probably just repurpose today's newsletter, call it a year recap, and be done there, because no one wants to work late.
You're a veteran, Miles. I was just going to suggest that. Cut and paste.
How easy is that? No one wants to work late on New Year's Eve, so we won't. We already have a preview of the December 31, 2021 morning brief newsletter you can find in your inbox.